Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into a story that really gripped the nation, the disappearance of Jennifer Doulos.
Yeah.
And we've got a ton of sources for this one. News articles, court documents, even some of Jennifer's own blog posts.
Right.
So it's going to be a really interesting deep dive, I think. It's a story about, like, a picture-perfect life, but with, like, really dark secrets underneath.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where, like, truth is stranger than fiction, you know?
Absolutely.
You've got Jennifer, you've got Fotis, both super bright, ambitious people.
Met at Brown.
They met at Brown University.
Yeah.
And on the surface, they had it all, right? You know, the prestigious educations, the successful careers, beautiful family.
Yeah.
But as we dig deeper, we're going to see that things were not as they seemed.
Not even close. Let's start, I guess, by getting to know Jennifer and Fotis a little bit.
Okay.
So Jennifer came from a very privileged family in New York. Always dreamt of having, like, the traditional family life. She was a writer.
Yeah.
And in some of her early blog posts, you could actually see some anxieties about commitment,
Yeah.
finding the right person, all of that.
Right.
And then you have Fotis, who was originally from Greece, super driven entrepreneur.
Yes.
Their paths crossed first at Brown, but then they reconnected years later at an airport in Aspen.
Yeah, it was like a real lightning strike moment.
Totally.
He was already divorced at that point.
Oh, wow.
And they rekindled their connection, and it led to this, like, whirlwind romance,
Wow.
Manhattan wedding.
Sounds like the start of a fairy tale.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But things take a darker turn when they end up moving to Connecticut.
Yeah.
And Jennifer's blog posts actually become really revealing at this point. They start to show these, like, cracks in the facade of this, you know, perfect life.
Right.
She starts talking about Fotis's demanding work schedule, her own growing isolation, and feeling overwhelmed with raising 5 young children.
5 kids.
5 kids.
Wow.
So, you know, it's a lot to handle.
Yeah.
And these feelings of isolation that she talks about, they're really key because they highlight this power imbalance that's starting to develop in their relationship.
Okay.
And she even writes about an incident where Fotis punches a parking attendant.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's a pretty big red flag right there. With
Yeah.
her. That points to, you know, his aggressive tendencies.
Yeah, for sure.
But beyond the emotional strain, there's also this mounting financial pressure that they're dealing with, including a lawsuit from Jennifer's own mother.
Oh, gee.
So it's like everything is kind of like closing in on them.
Yeah, so you've got this pressure cooker, you've got isolation, you've got financial strain,
Right.
and you've got Fotis's volatility.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, Fotis begins an affair.
Yes, with a woman named Michelle Troconis.
Okay, so tell me about Michelle.
So Michelle is interesting because in a lot of ways, she's very similar to Fotis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ambitious, successful. She shared his love of skiing.
Okay.
It's almost as if he was looking for, you know, a reflection of himself in a partner.
Right.
And get this, he actually suggests that Michelle should move into the family home
What?
while Jennifer is still living there.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my.
Which really shows you, you know, the level of disregard for Jennifer's feelings
Yeah.
and this need to control the situation.
That is wild. I can't even imagine what she must have been going through.
No.
So this was obviously a major breaking point for her.
Yes, absolutely.
Around this time, Fotis also brings a gun into the house, which was violating an agreement that they had.
Right.
So Jennifer, fearing for her safety and the safety of her children, decides to take the kids and move to a new house in New Canaan. So they're out of there.
Yeah, and this is really where the story takes this, like, sinister turn.
Okay.
Because Fotis is, you know, losing control of the situation.
Right.
And he makes this chilling 911 call where he claims that he can't reach his wife and children.
Oh, wow.
But this call was, you know, it was all a charade.
Oh,
This desperate attempt to paint himself as this concerned husband.
right. Right.
What he doesn't mention in the call is that he'd already lost custody of the children
Oh, wow.
because of his aggressive behavior.
So he's already lost custody.
Yes.
That's-
So, you know, this is all part of his manipulation.
Okay, so now we're at May 24th, 2019.
Yes.
The day Jennifer vanished.
Yeah.
So can you just walk us through the timeline of events?
Of course. So it starts off, you know, like any other day.
Right.
Jennifer drops the kids off at school. A neighbor's security camera actually catches her returning home.
Okay.
And then, poof, she's gone.
Vanished.
Jennifer misses appointments that she had scheduled in New York City.
Okay.
And her nanny, Lauren Almeida, arrives at the house and starts finding some unsettling clues.
Oh, what kind of clues?
Well, for one thing, Jennifer's purse is just sitting there on the floor,
Okay.
and a teacup is, like, full, which she had just stepped away for a moment.
Right.
But perhaps the most chilling detail is that there are only 2 rolls of paper towels left in the entire house.
Okay.
And at the time, Lauren doesn't think much of it.
Right.
But this seemingly insignificant detail later becomes a crucial piece of the puzzle.
It's crazy how these, like, little details could become so important.
It really is.
So at this point, are the alarm bells going off?
Yeah, the alarm bells are definitely starting to ring. And when Jennifer doesn't show up to meet the kids in Manhattan later that day,
Right.
the alarm bells turn into sirens.
Yeah.
And once the police are called and they actually begin their investigation, they uncover something truly disturbing, blood evidence, in the garage and the kitchen.
Here's where it gets interesting.
Yes, it does. Clearly, someone tried to clean up the scene.
Oh.
But traces of Jennifer's blood remained. They even found some on the faucet in the kitchen.
Oh, gosh.
Which is, pretty spine-chilling when you think about it.
Yeah, totally.
And to add to the mystery, Jennifer's Suburban was found abandoned a few miles away with the lights on.
Oh, wow.
Which immediately suggests a staged abduction.
Okay, so we've got a missing person, we've got signs of a struggle,
Right.
and we've got what seems like a staged abduction.
Exactly.
Where do investigators go from here?
So they really start piecing together, the events leading up to Jennifer's disappearance. And a key breakthrough comes when they get CCTV footage from a nearby road. And this footage shows Fotis and Michelle dumping trash bags along this specific route on the evening that Jennifer vanished.
Okay, so they're dumping trash bags.
Right.
That's suspicious.
Suspicious, yes.
But not necessarily incriminating.
Not on its own, no.
So what was in the bags?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The contents of those bags were incredibly incriminating.
Okay.
They find cleaning materials. They find Jennifer's clothing. And perhaps most chillingly, zip ties.
Zip ties? That sounds like something straight out of, like, a crime drama or something.
It does, doesn't it? And it paints a very disturbing picture of what might have happened to Jennifer.
Yeah.
But the evidence against Fotis and Michelle doesn't stop there.
Okay.
The police search Fotis's house, and they find something that they call an alibi script.
An alibi script?
Yeah, so it was this handwritten timeline
Okay.
that attempts to account for Fotis and Michelle's whereabouts on the day that Jennifer vanished.
Right.
But the problem is, this script is full of inconsistencies.
Okay.
And ultimately, it completely falls apart when you compare it to the actual evidence.
So it was like they were trying to, like, create a false narrative,
Exactly.
cover their tracks?
Yeah, but they weren't very good at it.
Right.
For example, Michelle initially claims that she was running errands while Jennifer disappeared. But that claim's contradicted by both Fotis's cell phone records and Michelle's own evolving story during multiple police interviews.
Oh, wow. So caught in a web of lies.
They certainly were.
What about, you mentioned earlier, that pickup truck they took to the car wash?
Right.
What happened with that?
So investigators find traces of Jennifer's blood on the passenger seat.
Oh, gosh.
Another attempted cover-up that backfired spectacularly.
It's like they were leaving a trail of breadcrumbs leading right back to them.
Yeah.
What about the bicycle sighting? You mentioned a figure matching Fotis's description was seen riding towards Jennifer's house the morning she disappeared.
Yeah, and that sighting, combined with the fact that Fotis was known to be an avid cyclist, it just added another layer of suspicion.
Right.
And remember that pickup truck that was seen near where Jennifer's Suburban was abandoned?
Yeah.
Witnesses initially reported that the bed of the truck was empty, but later it was observed to have something in it.
Oh, interesting. So it seemed like all the pieces were starting to fit together. Did the prosecution present a clear theory of what they believed happened to Jennifer?
They did. The prosecution theorized that Fotis, likely with Michelle's help, restrained Jennifer with those zip ties, stabbed her, and then cleaned up the blood using, those missing paper towels we talked about.
Right, right.
And they believed that Fotis then disposed of her body, which tragically has never been found.
Awful. What about Jennifer's blog posts?
Hmm.
Didn't Fotis's defense team try to use those to suggest she might have staged her own disappearance to frame him?
They did. They attempted to build this, like, Gone Girl type defense, arguing that Jennifer was unhappy in her marriage, feared Fotis,
Right.
and implied that she might have run away to make him look guilty.
Right.
They pointed to her blog posts about, their troubled marriage and anxieties as evidence.
I mean, I guess that's possible, but it seems like kind of a stretch, right?
Yeah.
To leave behind 5 kids. I mean, that seems unlikely.
Very unlikely. And more importantly, the physical evidence just didn't support that theory. The blood evidence, the zip ties, the attempted cover-up, it all pointed to a much more sinister scenario. But before we get to, the trial and the verdict, there's another player in this story we need to talk about. Kent Mawhinney.
Kent Mawhinney. I don't remember his name coming up before.
Yeah, because his role in the story kind of unfolds a bit later.
Okay.
He was an attorney and an acquaintance of both Fotis and Michelle.
Yeah.
And his name appeared in both of their alibis.
Okay.
And there were some very suspicious circumstances surrounding his involvement.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, there was the discovery of a potential gravesite behind Kent's gun club.
What?
Yeah. And this site contained 2 unopened bags of lime,
Okay.
the exact size and shape of a grave.
Oh my gosh, that's creepy.
Very chilling detail.
So what happened next? Did Fotis, Michelle, and Kent ever face trial for their alleged roles in Jennifer's disappearance?
Well, things took another dramatic turn. As the evidence against Fotis mounted and a trial seemed imminent, he attempted suicide.
Oh, wow. What happened?
He sent his then-girlfriend, Anna Curry, out on an errand.
Okay.
And then he connected a hose to his car's exhaust.
Oh, no.
And sadly, he succeeded.
Oh.
He left behind a note proclaiming his innocence, stating that he refused to spend even an hour in jail for something he didn't do.
That's so sad. But it also kind of feels like a cowardly way out, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he robbed Jennifer's family and friends of the chance to see him face justice in court.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex and controversial aspect of the case.
Right.
But his suicide, unfortunately, left many questions unanswered.
Right.
Where is Jennifer's body?
Wow.
What was the full extent of Kent Mawhinney's involvement? Did anyone else help Fotis and Michelle?
So many questions. So with Fotis gone, what about Michelle and Kent? Did they ever face trial?
They did. With Fotis gone, the focus shifted to their roles in the conspiracy.
Right.
Michelle Troconis' trial took place in January of 2024,
Okay.
while Kent Mawhinney's is actually still pending.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. They were tried separately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what was the outcome of Michelle's trial?
Michelle was found guilty on all 6 counts that she was facing.
Oh, wow.
Conspiracy to commit murder, tampering with evidence, and hindering prosecution.
Wow. Guilty on all counts.
Yeah.
That's huge, especially considering, like, they never found Jennifer's body.
Right.
It really speaks to, like, the strength of the circumstantial evidence.
It does.
All those little pieces.
Right.
The blood stains,
Yeah.
the zip ties,
Uh-huh.
the inconsistent alibis.
The car wash, the potential grave site. I mean, it all added up to paint this, really damning picture.
It really did.
And this case highlights, how crucial digital footprints and forensic evidence are in modern investigations.
Yeah.
The CCTV footage, cell phone records, and that blood evidence, it was all key in securing Michelle's conviction. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like this, chilling reminder that even in, the digital age, you think you can cover your tracks, but you really can't.
Yeah, they can.
You leave a trace. But, I just want to, step back for a second, because this whole case is just so heartbreaking. It's just, to think about her kids, growing up without their mother, knowing that their father was responsible. I mean, that's just devastating.
It is. And this case is just a tragedy on so many levels.
Yeah.
It raises these really important questions about domestic violence, coercive control, and the often subtle signs of an abusive relationship.
It's true. And it's like Jennifer's story is a stark reminder that, things are not always what they seem.
Right.
Behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to reach out for help.
Right.
But it just tragically wasn't enough.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to talk about these issues, to recognize the red flags, and to believe victims when they come forward.
This deep dive has been a really heavy one, but I think incredibly insightful as well. So, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners walk away with?
For me, it just reinforces like how important it is to pay attention to those subtle signs of abuse.
Yeah.
Those seemingly small acts of control that can escalate over time.
Right.
It's also just a reminder that we can't always rely on appearances, to
Absolutely.
tell us the whole story.
Yeah, and I think it's also like a reminder that we need to trust our gut instincts
Yes,
and speak up if we see something that seems off.
absolutely.
And I think Jennifer's legacy, in part, should be, just this reminder that we can all play a role in preventing domestic violence
Yeah.
and supporting survivors.
Well said. And while this case is a tragedy, I do think it can also be like a catalyst for change.
I agree. Thank you so much for guiding us through this complex and emotional case.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
And to all of you listening, we encourage you to learn more about Jennifer's story.
Yeah.
And just the ongoing fight against domestic violence.
Right.
And remember, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out for help.
Yes.
There are resources available. You don't have to suffer in silence. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.